So there was a piece over at ESPN.com that Dana Altman got asked about with regards to his retirement. And I understand where everyone is coming from here. I could very easily paint this in a picture of this is a ridiculous headline. Why is this question getting asked? Why is Dana Altman not admitting the truth? Like, I could do any of that sort of stuff, but people have been with me for a while. I appreciate you very much, by the way. I think you know that's not really how I roll. So there's a piece over at ESPN that is examining the national glance at the coaching carousel in college basketball. And so the guy that wrote this piece goes through and lists the open jobs that could come open, and, you know, coaches that might retire and all of this. And then someone reads that and then relays the question back to Dana Altman. Everyone in this sequence of events is doing their job, and I don't think is doing so in a ridiculous way. To write the piece and look at a 66-year-old coach and wonder, could he retire without having any, you know, firsthand information on that front, is not an unreasonable thing to do. It's the middle of March. I'm still talking about Oregon football. I'm in the content business. I get it. It's not an unreasonable, speculative comment to make. And then when that gets picked up and then asked to Dana Altman in his weekly press conference, you know, he shrugged it off and had a very Dana Altman-like response where, you know, he said something to the effect, Matt Prame of 24/7 Sports had tweeted out that, you know, he was joking that 66 is the new 40, or that 66 isn't that old. I had tweeted out that 66 is the new 40. But, you know, I think that for Dana Altman, like, eventually he won't be Oregon's basketball coach. But I don't know when that's going to be. Certainly you can't look at what he's done the last couple of years and say that his performance is dropping off. There was a brief period in time where you could have said that. You know, not making the tournament 2 years in a row. I went into last season actually saying, you know, if Oregon misses the tournament for a third straight year, I'll start to ask the question, does Oregon want to go find a new basketball coach? Now, it's not as if he, you know, had run the program into the ground and when they were winning 10, 12 games. Like, he's reset the standard, like Oregon football, very high standard. Basketball, Dana Altman has reset the standard as well. He's the winningest coach in the history of the program and has more NCAA tournament wins than the rest of Oregon's coaches in the past combined, I'm pretty sure, or somewhere in that regard. Like, he's 15-7 all time in the NCAA tournament. That's a pretty darn good tournament record. So for Dana Altman, eventually there will come a time where he doesn't want to coach anymore and go through the grind of it. But clearly that time isn't now. Because if they'd missed the tournament for a third straight year last season, I would have said, boy, I don't know, this isn't looking great. But then they go win the Pac-12 tournament. And you know, going back to my point about Oregon football and building, that, you know, national championship seasons rarely just happen. They're built upon over several years. It's true in basketball as well. You know, last year was a huge momentum season for Oregon, but there was a ceiling on that team. They didn't have the depth they needed. I think they are a deeper team this year. And I think part of the reason they were able to attract players like Brandon Angel and TJ Bamba, who are both starters for the Ducks. Neither one has played great in the last couple of weeks, but they have been starters throughout the course of this season. Or why you attract a player like Jackson Shellstad, who they recruited for a very long time, or why Nate Biddle would want to come back, or, you know, any of these guys or newcomers, Supreme Cook, who has done some good things for Oregon this year. You do that by going out and having a great season and making players go, oh, I want a piece of that. Oh, look, Dana Altman's still got it. He's still coaching at a high level. I want to see how I can be a part of it. How can I contribute to that? So you win the Pac-12 tournament last year with a great run. You're literally 1 minute with a 4-point lead against Creighton away from going to the Sweet 16. And now they've built on that momentum and carried it over into this season, both in how they use that to acquire new talent and also getting valuable experience for the talent that they have recruited over the last several cycles, Jackson Shellstad and KJ Evans most notably. So those guys will go into this year's NCAA tournament and the Big Ten tournament on Thursday. Big preview of that game tomorrow on the show with Jacob Goins of Locked On Hoosiers. They'll go into the NCAA tournament with some experience having been there before. That sort of stuff is valuable. And so there's no drop off here, right? So the original speculation that came from outside the program was not unwarranted because Dana Altman is 66. Look at these coaches that have retired across college basketball. Eventually, father time wins out. But what Dana Altman is showing is, in his response by saying, I don't think I'm that old. I don't think I act that old. I don't think 66 is that old. Well, that's an answer from a guy that clearly wants to keep doing it. The results on the court continue to get better season over season after there was a bit of a lull. There's no real, indicator that he shouldn't be Oregon's basketball coach right now. I don't see it. Even if they go and lose in the second round this year, it's still like he's had a good season. It was better than last year. And you just keep building and building on this sort of stuff. And, he went on to say he still loves coming into work. He still loves coaching. I think he's plenty well compensated. He makes about $4 million a year. What more do you want? What more are you looking for here? But, I get how, Altman, he gave another part of the quote where he was saying, I don't even know where this stuff comes from and whatnot. Well, it didn't come from anywhere. The indication from the reporter at ESPN was not that, he had an inside source that Dana Altman's going to retire, that he's going to leave or do this, that, and the other thing. No, he was just looking at the college basketball landscape and saying, hey, he's 66. Right? It was like, I read the piece. It was kind of a throw-in line of sorts. It made sense. It was talking about him and Rick Barnes at Tennessee. And Tennessee, by the way, believe is a very good program. Rick Barnes, historically been a really good coach. And eventually, those guys will stop. Eventually, is it now? It's just kind of a discussion point. So I get why it was originally suggested. I get why the question is asked. And I really understand why Dana Altman's answer was what it is. And I'm happy that it is, because clearly the guy still knows how to coach. Here he is on a W7 going into the Big Ten tournament on Thursday, still with plenty on the line and plenty to be gained for the Ducks in that matchup. But, I understand those who came to be critical of Dana Altman when they missed the tournament in back-to-back years, because that wasn't the standard that he had set. Coming out of that COVID-impacted tournament, they were gifted a win in the first round against VCU, but then backed it up by beating the crap out of Iowa, who was the 2 seed, and then they got destroyed by USC in that Sweet 16 game. But then, missing the tournament next couple of years in a row, well, that's not where Oregon basketball is supposed to be. But now it feels like it is back to where it's supposed to be. So that was the whole Dana Altman retirement story that was kind of flying around that I found to be interesting, to say the least. Eventually, he won't be Oregon's coach, but I have no interest in that being anytime soon. I am interested, whenever the season does come to a close, hopefully in the Final Four. Hey, you never know. A boy can dream. I'm interested to see how the recruiting cycle goes, who comes back, and whatnot. But we'll save that for when it's relevant. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.